Welcome to the Jets Roundtable. All sorts of excited here. We are one man down this week. No Matt O'Leary. Feeling a little under the weather. Matt, we hope you feel better. But we're excited to talk to you guys for the next hour or so about our New York Jets. Richie, how you doing? Good to have you back.
Seriously, I was about to say, it feels good to be back. Shout out to Jake and Ryan and Matt. We're thinking of you, Matt. Hope you're feeling better. I know you're feeling a little under the weather today, but you guys have been holding it down here on the Jets Roundtable. We're really excited to continue this weekly show going into the latest NFL season, off-season stuff, more in particular the New York Jets. Has a lot of awesome segments lined up today. Don't forget to hit that like button, folks, and subscribe here to the AFC East Roundtable. It's a little competitive over here, right? We got the Dolphins Roundtable. We got the Bills Roundtable, which, by the way, hasn't been active, Dan Mitchell. And the Patriots Roundtable is not even active just yet. I want to make the Jets Roundtable the best on this channel, and that's up to us, folks. So welcome back to the Jets Roundtable. Jake, great to see you, bro. How you doing?
I'm hanging in, Richie. Good to get you back on here on your own roundtable that you started. It just feels like it's not meant to be. Where all four of us are on at once, but we're making it happen. I'm good. I'm going to be in Indy next week for the Combine, so I'm excited to
awesome.
kind of break it up a little bit. Like it kind of feels like we're talking about very similar storylines involving the Jets, and it feels like next week we'll actually get like new rumors, more tangible reports. Douglas is going to speak. So I'm excited, man. We're just a couple days away from, I feel like, the NFL offseason kind of truly getting underway at the Combine.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, you killed it over in Vegas. Like, congratulations. And just like I was sitting back watching every interview that you had with CJ and all those guys, and can't wait to see you in Indianapolis. I'm sure it's going to be another awesome experience for you.
Thank you, man. I'm excited. Hopefully, hopefully I could get like Daniel Jeremiah on or Mel Kiper or some of like the draft guys. We always talk about their mock drafts. I think it would be fun to get them on and be like, hey, we're gonna do a live mock on the show, Jet specific, and I think that'll be a fun exercise to do with some people. So should be fun. Hopefully, people on the channel will like the content next week.
That sounds awesome to me. Guys, if you're not familiar with the hosts here on the AFC's Roundtable, the Jets Roundtable in particular, we got Jake Asman on the Jake Asman Show. His channel's linked down below. And, of course, the host Ryan, Jets Talk 24/7, and Matt O'Leary's channels, I'm assuming, still down below, even if he's not with us. Make sure you guys go subscribe to all their guys' content, because even if you're a Dolphins, Bills, Patriots fan, they need more rivals on their channel, okay? I'm sick of seeing you guys. They need to see you too. We have enough Jets fans in the chat, okay? We need to get some more hate in their chat in terms of from the Dolphins fan base, because that's what I have to deal with on a weekly basis. But hey, I digress. Ryan, let's get into the first topic, because Mr. Sauce Gardner has a new name. It's LeSauce, okay? That's how I like to say it. It's not Sauce Gardner, it's LeSauce. And what does that mean? He's a GM now. Joe Douglas, move aside, baby. Sauce Gardner is here recruiting the players. I kind of want to ask you guys a question about this, because, some people that are non-Jets fans look at this like, oh, like tampering, or it's a negative. Like, oh, this Sauce is not helping the situation. He's giving the Jets no leverage in these situations. So, Ryan, I want to get your thoughts. Do you have any problem with what Sauce Gardner's doing in recruiting, or are you all on board with the LeSauce being an active GM?
I am all on board for this, because there is nothing exciting about the New York Jets after the way our season ended. You're talking about Keith Carter being blown up by the offensive line guys, the season spiraled out of control, everything going on with the athletic report, with the coaching staff and all that good stuff. So if we can generate a little bit of excitement because one of our star players is trying to recruit other stars, I'm 100% on board with this. I think anyone who's upset with this is just an old man yelling at clouds.
How about you, Jake?
I don't mind it because, I mean, isn't this a breath of fresh air from what it's been in the past, where we have, Jets star players basically implying they want to leave and like not actually trying to recruit players to come and play for the Jets? I mean, Jamal Adams literally ran a smear campaign against his own head coach to try and get traded not that long ago. So to me, I have no problem with this. I just want to make sure Sauce doesn't, say anything that could get him personally in trouble, or anything that can be viewed as like a slight at one of his teammates, which I don't think he has done. So I have no issue with this. I think Sauce is just having fun. I mean, I think we got to remember, like, Sauce Gardner's 22, 23 years old, right? Like, these guys are still just kids at the end of the day. They're just messing around. They just obviously have a huge following because they're professional athletes playing in New York. But I have no problem with this. It's fun. Sauce is good natured. He's all about the Jets being better and getting better, and he's had positive things to say about Aaron Rodgers too, which I thought was great. So I have no issue with this. I think it's fun this time of year. Why not?
Not to mention the one comment he has up here. I'm not an official GM. I'm a freelance GM that works from home. I'm just biased when it comes to the New York Jets. It sounds like a few of us, maybe beautiful people stacked in a row.
It literally feels like Sauce is us. Like, it feels like he is a Jets fan more than anything else. And another thing, there's proof that this works. He's 1 for 1. Let's not forget what he did last year recruiting Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it was more of a trade. It's not like, that was a different situation here. But some people are like, oh, don't get caught up in Sauce recruiting everybody and make believe you're going to get all these players. He's 1 for 1. So he's trying to be 2 for 2. And he's recruiting all the players that I kind of want. Obviously, we're not getting every single player he's recruiting, but he's definitely going all in for wide receiver help. And now he's getting into the offensive line, as you see on this tweet. What does this one say, Ryan?
So this one, he's just talking about what his philosophy is as a GM. So obviously, he starts with getting an elite quarterback. Then he gets the wide receivers that he knows could win in a 7-on-7 tournament. And then he goes after O-line to protect his elite quarterback so he can throw to the wide receivers he's just recruited. And then he moves on. And I would say this pretty much fits the bill with what Jet fans are kind of feeling. Offensive line and wide receiver.
Literally. And you know what? The one thing I've noticed, I don't think I've seen Sauce mention one player on defense to come to the Jets. Everything is offense. He's like, we're good over here. Even if Bryce Huff walks, which is going to hurt and sting every single Jets fan to see him get paid elsewhere potentially, he's not even worried about what acquisitions the Jets need to get on defense. And for obvious reasons, right, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this. As much as we all want Bryce Huff back, and believe me, I'm sure we'll talk about it, like, I'm fully in the camp of you pay him, you do what you can to keep him. If they do nothing on defense, like literally nothing, like they at least in theory have a top 10 defense. Now they need to fill safety, defensive tackle, but stuff along the margins. Like the core of the defense is all under contract for another year. Everything should be on the offensive side of the ball. And Sauce gets that. He knows. He's not dumb. He just lived through a year in which, the Jets still won 7 games despite having like a historically bad offense. So, I mean, he's not wrong. O-line and receivers. You have Rodgers coming back, and you in theory, can go from 32nd offensively to, let's say, just average. Let's say they go from 32 to 18. All of a sudden, the New York Jets, or 32 to 16, excuse me, that'd be average. Like, all of a sudden, the New York Jets, at least on paper, should be right there in the mix for a playoff spot. So they're not as down as we are as Jet fans. I think it's important still to remember they're not nearly as far away as maybe what some want to maybe paint the picture that they are. And so I think Sauce knows that.
I agree. Absolutely agree. And I feel like when it comes to Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley, I feel like that's the two guys that he's really focusing in on at the wide receiver spot. Ryan, do you have a preference? I tweeted that out actually today and on Instagram to ask Jets fans that question regarding Calvin Ridley versus Mike Evans. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I do. I think Calvin Ridley's still going to get a really big contract. I don't think it's going to be as big as Mike Evans. But when I was going back to when we originally were trying to trade for Calvin Ridley, I feel like we got that type of receiver in Garrett Wilson. So for me, I want someone that's going to help us complement Garrett Wilson. And I feel like Mike Evans, 6'5", red zone target, even if he loses a little bit of a step over these next 2 years, you're still getting someone that's going to be able to out-jump people, be a big body in the red zone. That's who I would prefer. If you get him at $25 million a year, I'd sign up for that all damn day. I think it's the biggest upgrade you could make to this wide receiver core.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like both of them, you'd definitely be happy with both. But you look at Mike Evans, it's more of a win now type of season. He's a future Hall of Famer, right? He's never had a season below 1,000 yards. Neither has Garrett Wilson, by the way, 2 for 2. So shout out to my guy Garrett Wilson, of course, changing his number to number 5. Cannot wait to see what that looks like. And you see all these different teams that Mike Evans could be linked to. Jake, do you think Mike Evans has a realistic chance to land with the New York Jets, or do you think it's kind of an unrealistic situation coming from a Jets fan perspective? Like, should we be really hopeful that he chooses the Jets? Because remember, it's a two-way party here. The Jets can have all the interest in the world, but Mike Evans got to be interested, and the money's got to be in the best interest as well.
I still think more likely than not, he's not a Jet, because it's tough for me to picture him actually still leaving Tampa. It feels like there's some negotiating through the media going on right now by Evans's camp. That being said, if he hits the open market, then the Jets should make him their number 1 target. Like, we didn't think a year ago at this time they were definitely getting Aaron Rodgers. Like, it was like, what? this actually could happen, and then it started kind of to ramp up. So if we get some new news that, no, Evans is hitting free agency, like they're not working out a deal, then the Jets should be all in and bringing that guy in for the reasons you guys said. He's quarterback proof. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a perfect complement to Garrett Wilson with the size and speed element that Evans could bring. But I still think he's going back to Tampa. But the more this drags on, the Jets should make him their number one target. We know they had interest at the trade deadline a year ago. I think he would love to play with Aaron Rodgers. It's a very similar situation to, when Tom Brady went down to the Bucs. So Evans, to me, would be the guy you go after. I just have my doubts he's truly going to hit free agency. I still think he's back to Tampa. But until he's not, that to me is the guy the Jets should pursue. And I think if he actually is open to leaving Tampa, he would be open to joining the Jets. So I think the Jets do have that going for them.
So you have Mike Evans over Calvin Ridley in your preferred receiver, Jake?
I do, because to me, you're in such a go for it, win now mode that if you got to overpay, which you do in free agency, I'd rather overpay for the guy that I probably only have to commit a 2-year deal of guarantees rather than Ridley, where it might be more. And I think Evans is a better player too. I know Ridley's younger, but I think Mike Evans being 6'5" and being kind of quarterback proof is the tiebreaker for me here. I think Evans will produce no matter who's throwing to him. And if you're the Jets, you can't bank on Rodgers playing all 17 games next year. So the 3 games he might miss where you have your backup playing, why not have a guy at receiver next to Garrett Wilson, who's already proven this as well, that could put up numbers no matter who's throwing to him. So that's why I lean Evans.
And I put a poll in the chat, folks. Want to get you guys more interactive. Who would you rather have? Mike Evans or Calvin Ridley on the New York Jets? The poll is live, and so far, Mike Evans seems to be the favorite amongst Jets fans. And let's not pretend that one of these two is destined to be a Jet. There's other options out there, like a Michael Pittman Jr., of course, Brendan Ayuk, which we'll talk about in the trade market, Devontae Adams. There's a lot of other wide receivers, but hey, we're talking about LeSauce, okay? He's talking about these 2 receivers. We got to talk about these 2 receivers. So sound off in the chat right now, folks. And we got a super chat from JT. The AFC East isn't ready for us next season. 2024 AFC East champion upcoming. Do you guys have any idea how much this would mean to this YouTube channel? I've suffered 4 years straight of the Bills winning this division, man. Oh, my God. That would be great, man. Do you guys have what's your thoughts about the division? Like in terms of being competitive next year? I saw odds on BetUS to win the AFC East, and like the Jets and the Dolphins are right there next to each other, and their Super Bowl odds came out. The Jets and the Dolphins have the same exact odds to win the Super Bowl next year. When let me just remind everybody, the Dolphins made the playoffs and the Jets didn't. So I'm curious, Ryan, what's your optimism, being realistic at the same time, of the Jets actually winning the division? Because remember, that's what Aaron Rodgers' expectations were when he came to the Jets, giving us a home playoff game. Do you think that's an actual realistic opportunity for them?
Yeah, I actually think it's going to be the best route towards the playoffs for the New York Jets as well. Our division is going to be, I think, a little bit it's going to be tough, obviously, between all 4 teams. I think the Patriots probably are going to be that last team in there, but we'll beat up on each other a lot throughout the course of the season. And with the way the AFC is shaken out, you're going to get a healthy Herbert coming back with Harbaugh. I think that team's going to be very difficult to beat with some good coaching. You got Watson coming back from injury, Burrow coming back from injury. I think it's going to be tough to make one of the wild card spots potentially with how tough our division is. So I think the best route is actually going to be going through the division. I think Buffalo is going to take a little bit of a step back, and I would expect the Jets and Dolphins to be the 2 teams at the top of the AFC East next year.
How about you, Jake? Like, not even from a Jets perspective, like, what do you see from the Bills and the Dolphins? I don't think we have to really say anything about the Patriots because they're entering a rebuild. Like, do either of those teams scare you to improve and get better next year, to threaten for the AFC East? And obviously, we have to give the Bills their credit. 4 times in a row, they're AFC East champions, even when they were not the division leading team all season long. They still ended up somehow winning it. How do you think the Jets stack up against the Bills and the Dolphins in particular?
If you tell me Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I think the Jets are just as good as both teams, which people are going to say, what? No way. It's like, you realize the Jets have a top 5 defense, top 5 special teams, and they still won 7 games and had a historically bad offense. Obviously, if they do nothing right now, yeah, we could say the Jets O-line's not good enough and they're going to have issues there, but they have beaten the Bills head-to-head each of the last 2 seasons. Miami went 1-5 against teams with a winning record. There's always going to be the injury question with Tua, just like there's a big injury question with Rodgers. So I don't think the Jets are that far away from competing for the division. You want to say the Bills are the favorites? That's fair. They've earned that. They've been the champs the last 4 years. They have Josh Allen, who's a great quarterback. But we can't sit here and act like the Jets, at least from a talent perspective, aren't in the same ballpark as those teams. It's such a year-to-year league in the NFL, and that gives you hope. So I think the Jets are in the mix. I do. I mean, last I checked, they were the only team in the division that had to play a backup for 17 games last year. So I think that doesn't get talked enough about. Like, if you want to tell me Rodgers won't be as good, that's fine. He's still better than anything we saw last year from the Jets by a wide margin, and we're talking about a floor of a 7-win team. So I don't think they're that far away from competing for the division, and that might be their best path given how competitive the AFC is. To win the division is their best way to get into the playoffs. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow all offseason.
Yes, it will, 110%. And I think Dolphins fans and Bills fans got to just accept the reality that the Jets are a completely different team with Aaron Rodgers. Now, there's no proof because we haven't seen it yet, but Jake brings up a lot of great points. Top 5 defense, top 5 special teams, bottom barrel offense, still wins 7 games. I mean, what do you expect the Jets to do when they just get average offense, hopefully? We'll see. Now, we got another super chat from Dre Correa with the $2. None of the above. Cortland Sutton better than Field. Oh, wait. This is Dane's super chat?
Am I missing? Whoop. Sorry.
No, you're good. None of the above. Cortland Sutton greater than Field. What does he mean by this?
He's saying Cortland Sutton's the best option for the New York Jets, and it's better than the Field, like offering any other wide receiver that you could possibly get.
I like
Cortland Sutton. It's like, wait a second. I like Cortland Sutton a lot. If there's a way to get him, especially like if there's a situation where the Jets can trade down from 10 to 12 with the Broncos and get Sutton in that trade back rather than a draft pick, he's got 2 years left on his deal. I think it's $13.5 and $14 million over the course of the next 2 years. And he provides that same size frame as Mike Evans without, obviously all the production that Evans has. There's a reason why he's going to be half the price of a Mike Evans or of a Calvin Ridley. So for me, for the money and for what it might cost in a draft pick for a Broncos team that's going to be shedding players like crazy trying to get under the cap, I would go with Sutton over, I think, most other players in this, wide receiver class.
Interesting. Dane's super chat. Does it help hurt? We courted Ridley once. Evans. Yeah, I mean, what was that, last year or 2 years ago, the Jets were linked to Calvin Ridley? I remember making videos about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they got suspended, so then it ended up not mattering. I think if Ridley hits the open market, they'll be in on him. I think they probably would prefer Evans over him, but you could do a lot worse than Calvin Ridley. And then, look, Cortland Sutton's another name to watch in a trade, too. I would be surprised, guys, if we didn't get to the draft and they don't have another number 2 receiver already in place. Like, I feel like if you're the Jets, you're going to bank on pick 10 to fill one of your tackle needs, but you're going to enter the draft where you already have that number 2 receiver locked in. I'd be surprised if they got on the clock at 10 and we're debating, well, do they take one of the receivers here? Do they take Bowers? Because, we feel good about their O-line. I feel like free agency and a trade is how they fix receiver. Combination of free agency and then the main stamp of improvement, the 10th pick on a tackle, is how they fix offensive line.
And Dane's asking, so does it help? He said in the chat, did we end on good terms? What do you say to that, Ryan? Did it help that the Jets tried to pursue Calvin Ridley and missed out on him? Does it give them a more, likely opportunity for them to actually get him this time? Or do you think it helps or not help the situation?
It probably doesn't hurt. I mean, at least having the research and the legwork done on what type of player he is, how you feel, he's able to be coached versus, because he did sit out some time prior to the suspension as well with the coaching staff. So I know there were some potential red flags there, but it seems like that was all sorted out. I think he might get a little bit more of an inside track. I don't know. I think he's probably going to end up going where the most money ultimately ends up being. And I don't know, for me, I think Ridley's more of a duplicate of Garrett as opposed to, maybe providing a different skill set for a different wide receiver.
Next super chat comes from Bradley, $5. Thank you so much, Bradley. We appreciate all the super chats from you guys. Big time.
We've got
shout out.
JT first.
We got JT first. How did I miss my guy JT again? Bumfin fans, give a reason other than it's the Jets.
Bumfin.
Funny.
I like that.
The Bumfin fans. And we got a Bills fan calling us delusional in the chat as well. But hey, welcome to the AFC's Roundtable. Bradley is up next. Thank you, JT, for the $2, by the way. And Bradley, thank you for the $5. Think we got lucky with the depth at our needs this draft. Our situation feels like a death sentence most years. What do you think he means by this one, Ryan?
So he's talking about, the draft is very deep with wide receiver and with offensive tackle. I wish free agency had a little bit more in the way of tackle. the tackle situation. I think it's probably likely that we end up with Bakhtiari at some point, although I think that's going to be something that happens closer to the draft or whenever he can actually pass a physical. I think the Jets are going to have to solve offensive line before they actually bring him in. But I would be on board with, a few different routes they go. I like the idea of a veteran offensive tackle on the left-hand side because I like the projection of where Carter Warren could be. And in my mind, my worst-case scenario, if you go after a Tyron Smith or a Bakhtiari and he winds up failing, you have AVT that can kick out that way anyway. And then, like Jake mentioned before, if you solve offensive tackle on the right-hand side at number 10, I feel like you're sitting pretty.
Interesting stuff. So we got a Bills fan really pressing us, right? I want to be interactive with the chat. All right, we got our guy Jason saying, if you clowns would just keep it real, then maybe I would take you more seriously. So what do you think he's referring to? What are we saying that's so delusional, Jake? Why is he calling us a clown?
I'm not sure. I mean, is his head still, not screwed on properly after another wide right? Like, I mean, I feel his pain, I guess. I don't know. I mean, our season ended after 4 plays. Like, they made the playoffs and won a playoff game and then had their hearts ripped out again. So we're all going through some pain, Jason. Why do we have to call? Why are we clowns? Why are you coming after us?
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. And then we got another super chat from Tony. Mr. Clean is on the clock. Tony loves referring to Robert Saleh as Mr. Clean. He is on the clock, man. This is someone that has a lot to prove. He has a lot to prove. I mean, this is it. Not only him, but Joe Douglas and the entire regime of the organization. And we're not going to be hearing from Mr. Clean. I guess I'll refer to him that. Next week, it's just going to be Douglas, but that's not unusual. We didn't hear from Saleh last year at the Combine as well. But we shall see. Thank you for the super chat, Tony. Really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into the next segment, which is I want to talk about Sam Howell next, Ryan.
Ooh, okay.
Because I know it's a little transition here. I don't know where you guys stand on this, so I'm definitely curious to get your guys' thoughts. And I do want to make another poll in the chat for you guys to interact, Jets fans, because Sam Howell is a very interesting opportunity for the New York Jets as a backup quarterback. And the reason why he's different, in my opinion, than other guys like a Brissett or Minshew or any other veteran, right? Ryan Tannehill, is that he's extremely young, right? He's younger than some prospects entering the draft this year, and it's the opportunity for the Jets to have maybe a long-term answer developing behind Aaron Rodgers. But at the same time, we want someone that is absolutely ready to go in case Rodgers goes down in a win-now season. So it's a little balanced here. And Sam Howell, and on a terrible Washington team, he actually put up just under 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. The Jets defense absolutely shut him down, which resulted in Brissett to come in and actually light us up, if we remember that game. But hey, I'm not taking Sam Howell struggling against the Jets defense against him, because we saw C.J. Stroud look like a bum against the Jets defense. We saw Mahomes struggle against the Jets defense, and both those quarterbacks are no bums, all right? So, Ryan, I'm curious your thoughts about Sam Howell. Are you in or are you out?
I think we could do a lot worse than Sam Howell. If the Jets wind up making a move for him, I think the question comes down to me is, why would Washington move him? He was roommates with Drake May in college. I feel like there's going to be some type of relationship there. And if you don't want your young number 2 overall pick to start right away, it might make a lot of sense to have a cheap backup on the roster. Now, if they want to move him, the first round pick, the third round pick, obviously off the table for the Jets. But then you start talking maybe a 4th round pick. We got 2 of them. And then after that, you're talking 6th and 7th round picks. Do I want to give up a 4th round pick for Howell? If we strike out on everything else, I'm fine with it. I feel like for me, I would prefer a quarterback with a higher floor as our backup. Someone like a Brissett makes me feel a little bit more comfortable than maybe the highs and lows that Howell could provide, because along with those 21 touchdowns, he did have 21 interceptions as well. So I don't know. I would prefer someone who's a little safer that could win us games that Rodgers is out for in this particular type of season.
Yeah, and that's the balance, right? You want, like, the way I look at it is I'm so starving for, I love Aaron Rodgers, nothing against him, but I'm starving for a franchise long-term quarterback. And, I don't know what – it's either you draft one and he's quarterback number 3 in the 5th round behind Brissett, and you're hopeful he's the guy, or they go a younger guy to sit behind, because that's what the idea what Zach Wilson was heading into this past season, which obviously blew up in their face, which is why they're trading him. So, Jake, what's your thoughts about Sam Howell and the overall backup quarterback position that the Jets are pursuing in the offseason?
Sam Howell makes sense if they were, cap restricted. if like they were like, well, he's $1 million, as a cap hit, and all of a sudden we have basically saved a tremendous amount of money on quarterback. But I just feel like in such an all-in year, you got to have a higher floor as your backup than Sam Howell. Like, to me, spend the money, get a Minshew, get a Brissett, call it a day. Trading draft capital for Howell, I think it also kind of depends on that, right? He was a 5th-round pick. What are the Commanders going to be asking for? If you tell me they'll take a 5th, then all right, you know what, a 5th for Sam Howell, I'll listen. But if I got to give a 3rd or even a 4th, I don't know. I think I'd rather just sign Brissett or Minshew. I think I just want a better quality of a backup quarterback. And it's funny, right? We're talking about Sam Howell, and DJ Reed is like Jacoby Brissett. So I just feel like bringing the guy who the last 2 times he's played against the Jets has looked really good. Like, Brissett was awesome this year when he played against them, and he was good against them in Cleveland 2 seasons ago. So that's my personal preference. Will I kill the Jets if they acquired Howell? Probably not, because I don't think it would take a tremendous amount, but I'd rather just sign the backup and figure out the problem that way.
I guess I can definitely admit the only reason why I like it a little more than usual is because I'm desperate for a franchise long-term quarterback. That's all it is. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys, yeah, Sam Howell's good enough to be the guy sitting behind Aaron, but like you never know. Like, I just hate the idea that we're going into a season potentially in a short-term window. I'm someone that always looks at every single team that I follow from a long-term lens. Like, do we have a sustainable success plan in place? And right now we don't. Like, in terms of the quarterback position. And I've been waiting we've all been waiting for a franchise quarterback since we became fans of this team. I anointed Sam Darnold as the franchise quarterback immediately when he was drafted, and I was delusional and convinced he was the guy. And then Zach Wilson comes around, and I want him to prove it a little bit. And then he obviously didn't. He fell down in his face. And I'm like, who's the next guy behind Aaron Rodgers? Like, I want there to be somebody that Aaron can teach while he's here. That's another thing I want to ask you guys. Like, is that going to come from via the draft? Like, say we get Brissett, are we drafting someone this year in the mid rounds? To, like, I want there to be a young quarterback that I can at least have a hope that he could be the guy when Aaron leaves. I feel like that's the only reason why Sam Howell raises my eyebrow. It's less of a short-term thing. It's more of a long-term thing.
Yeah, for me, when I'm looking at quarterback and a potential heir, I'm with Jake on this one. I want a high floor level backup like a Brissett or a Minshew or something along those lines as the backup. But if you want to talk about drafting a quarterback, I'm leery as to where the Jets would do it. And if they value certain positions, maybe in the 4th round that you might be able to get a starter at, like if you want a running back 2, if you want a, an interior defensive lineman, like a D tackle or something along those lines, or maybe an interior offensive lineman at guard. Like it's kind of a cost analysis based on Douglas and Saleh, them being in a hot seat year with a quarterback they're not going to take advantage of if all things work out the way they should, or maybe if they implode, they're not going to them anyway. For me, I would like a quarterback that I could throw on either the practice squad or IR. So Jordan Travis has the ankle injury. If you IR him, I only want to carry 2 quarterbacks into the season next season. I do not want to roll in with 3 quarterbacks. I feel like if you have to go to your 3rd quarterback, you're probably dead in the water anyway. And at that point, I'm feeding the ball to Breece Hall and, trying to get the ball out as quick as possible to Garrett Wilson. So for me, I don't want a 3rd quarterback actively on the roster. I'd rather hold that spot for an offensive lineman.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I feel like the backup quarterback position is a giant hole that, like, unfortunately we have to talk about. But, like, the idea for me is whoever we get doesn't touch the field. That's the hope. Right?
That's what we hope for. That was the whole plan last year. Aaron Rodgers never misses football games. And then it becomes a Jet. No sooner does the ink dry on the contract, dude's out for the entire season.
Come on, man.
Pain.
I can't. I can't believe it. I really can't. But, hey, we live and we learn and we move on. Okay? We move on. And we got the combine around the corner, and we're going to stay in the offseason and not even think about what happened last year. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
What you got next for us, Ryan, from a segment?
So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about David Bakhtiari. We're expecting him to get released. This is something we've talked about like dating back to last year. You're looking at his contract. It just made sense. $40 million cap hit this year. And then once he got knocked out first week of the season, it seemed inevitable that he was definitely going to get cut in the offseason. There was rumors that the Jets may wind up trading for him back when they made the move for Aaron Rodgers. Once Rodgers renegotiated his contract, the money that was freed up was eerily similar to what Bakhtiari's cap hit would have been if he was traded. So I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on Bakhtiari. I definitely like him. I feel like he's the type of tackle that only shakes free if there's a red flag available or triggered on him, similar to Trent Williams. Trent Williams, went for, I think, a 4th or a 5th round pick a few years ago because he had medical issues and there was, concerns with him. And the 49ers went out, took a risk, and they got one of the best, if not the best, offensive tackle in the game. So if you want to get a top-level tackle, I think this is the way you're going to have to do it because we don't have 2 top 10 draft picks that you can, fix that with. So for me, I would be in on Bakhtiari, especially knowing that he's going to have to pass a physical. So you're going to have to wait later into the offseason where I think you can already address tackle and have him as like okay, we'll go get Aaron's guy. Maybe it's on some type of incentive-laden deal like, hey, dude, we'll give you the vet minimum, and literally every game you're healthy, you're going to get a bonus check for it. Whatever that number is, $20 million? Okay. You know what? If you stay healthy for all the games, you're going to get what you should get as a top tackle.
Mm. What do you think, Jake? You in on Bakhtiari or you're out?
I'm in if it's truly a 1-year incentive-laden deal and he's like not penciled in as the 6th or as like the starting left or right tackle. Like he's the swing or he's competing with Carter Warren for even a spot on the team because his money is not guaranteed. It's one of those, hey, we'll get you in training camp. We have a bunch of incentives, but we can easily get out of it if you're not healthy. I mean, his injury history, as you see, like the tweet from our guy, the Buffalo Jet fan on the screen, I mean, it's bad, man. And I understand that maybe, they finally fixed his knee injury and it was the same issue and he finally got the proper surgery and time off to heal. But, if you're the Jets and you're coming off the last 2 years where you've led the NFL in injuries, it's tough to then say, well, let's bring in a guy who has barely played since 2020. It's just tough to do that. I get the upside because when he does play, he's still really good. But if he's anything more than a guy who's brought in on a 1-year deal with a very minimal financial commitments, I think it's a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that that scares me is the obvious of the injury bug, right? I mean, you talk about a guy that hasn't really stepped up to the plate and played, and that's it. You see the Buffalo Jet fan, a great Jets content creator. The injury history is what scares me away. And I would honestly sit here and tell you guys, if the Jets were healthy on the offensive line this year, it wouldn't be as bad as we all thought. The issue with the offensive line was more injury related than talent, in my opinion. And I'll stand on that. I mean, I know Mekhi Becton didn't really live up to the hype, but you talk about AVT going down, he's the best player on this offensive line. So, like, it's so tough to want a guy who is injury prone. Like that's the only thing that's a tough pill to swallow, unless they have some type of insurance plan where if he goes down, we have someone to plug in that I feel comfortable with.
Yeah, for me, AVT is that like emergency pull the ripcord type move, if you had to, for either left or right tackle. I think you can do a lot worse than AVT. But I agree, you can't have an incentive. It has to be incentive laden. You can't give someone who hasn't played any time the last 3 years to get a big guarantee in any capacity. Now, the interesting question, I think, I've had people ask me, would you prefer Becton to Bakhtiari? And the answer is no, absolutely not. If I'm going to roll the dice on an injury-prone player, I'm taking the guy that's a top 5 tackle over the dude that just had 22 penalties and 12, 13, whatever sacks he had this past season. For me, I'll take the gamble on the injury.
Ryan, to your point, like if you could get Bakhtiari in a 1-year, $5 million deal and like an extra $5 or $8 million in games played and incentives, like, all right, I'll roll the dice on that. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal if it's like in that range. What they can't do is like, he's our solution at left or right tackle. Pick 10's our right tackle. Off we go. Like they got to be better. You got to assume Bakhtiari is not playing most of the year, and anything you get from him is a bonus if you're going to make this move.
Completely agree.
I agree. Let us know in the chat, guys. Would you want the New York Jets to go after David Bakhtiari? I feel like it is a very interesting conversation. And I'm actually seeing the chat talk about Sam Howell. I know it's a little outdated here, but it's kind of split down the middle, 50-50, about who the chat would want Sam Howell or not. I found that interesting. 50-50.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we've seen the 4,000 yards. You see the flashy numbers at the beginning part of the season, but he had a ton of attempts. I think he had over 40 attempts in like the first half of the season, maybe, or something along those lines, where you look at like Zach Wilson and some of the metrics that we threw up before. If you extrapolate Zach's stats to 40 throws a game, yardage wise, it might look a little bit closer. You probably Zach's not a very high bar to step over. Like Howell's definitely an improvement, but I don't think just better than Zach is the bar we would want to clear.
Yeah, I agree more. I got you on that one. Now, guys, let us know in the chat about Bakhtiari. Now, if the Jets don't get Bakhtiari, Ryan, what other free agent tackles are you eyeing in terms of like left or right tackle?
So Cam Robinson's an interesting one. If he winds up shaken free from the Jaguars, I think he'd be pretty high on the top of my list. The other one would be Tyron Smith, and then Jonah Williams is interesting for me because Jonah Williams, from a health perspective, has been available. He plays left and right tackle. So in the event that you get a Joe Alt or an Olu Fashanu falling to you at number 10, you can take that guy and plug in Jonah on the right-hand side. And it kind of like hides what you're trying to do in the draft to some capacity. But yeah, I still believe in Carter Warren. So I would like to have someone who is solid and can help maybe groom him in a way that maybe in 2025 or 2026, he can take over the full-time role in some capacity. But I like the idea of going with a veteran left tackle for sure.
How about you, Jake? How do you see the Jets shaping out their offensive line via free agency more than anything?
I think they'll make a big investment in a guy who could play probably both left or right tackle, and then pick 10 if they could get, Olu Fashanu, for example. He's their left tackle. I could see that. I'm very curious to see, though, how AVT's positional flexibility impacts things. Like, there is a strong chance, I don't know about strong, but I think it's definitely one of the top possibilities where maybe they cut Lakin and they sign 2 guards, and then AVT's the right tackle, whoever they draft is the left tackle. Maybe they then still sign, Bakhtiari, and he's in there, and you have him compete with a rookie for the left tackle job. And I just feel like it kind of just gives you options, knowing that you could plug and play AVT at guard or tackle. I would like them to be like, all right, after the draft, here's what we're doing. So like the 5 guys that are expected to be out there know they're the 5 guys, and they get to build as much continuity as possible with Rodgers and OTAs and minicamp into training camp. But I think it's so tricky because, like, to me, in a perfect world, guys, you sign like Tyron Smith, and I know he's injury prone, but kind of with Bakhtiari, if I'm going to invest in all these guys in free agency that are there because there's issues with all of them, invest in the guy who's still top 5 when he plays, and then your right tackle is solved at pick 10, and AVT is one of your guards, probably his best position. So there's so many scenarios. I hope we kind of get more kind of breadcrumbs next week in Indy where the Jets are going in regards to what their strategy is there.
Yeah, and Woody had that weird comment at the NFL Honors where he was talking about, we need 2 guards, we need this and that, we need a tackle. So it sort of implies that they're thinking AVT at tackle if you're looking for multiple guards.
Right.
But and the financial side of it, falls in line with that as well, because AVT's 5th-year option that we're deciding on this year is going to be that of a top offensive tackle. It's going to be about $16 million a year. So I can understand from a financial asset allocation, maybe having a cheaper interior offensive lineman and bumping AVT to the outside. I would feel way more comfortable if I knew AVT was penciled in on the interior and he was our break glass in case of emergency tackle instead, especially coming off the Achilles injury. I feel like that is going to hamper him in some capacity next year.
Agreed.
David D with a $2 super chat says, what's Jordy Nelson doing these days?
We did have a super chat in there from Joey C. Threw that up on first. Then we'll go to David.
If Sam Howell enables us to re-sign Bryce Huff, I'm good with it. Then bring in a lower-level vet QB as well. Must bring back Huff. Now, that's a good segue into the next segment, Ryan. Unfortunately, guys, I've admitted defeat of Bryce Huff leaving the Jets. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely kind of wrap my head around it to avoid myself to be upset when it inevitably happens. So say he does resign, I'll be jumping for joy.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. I've said for a while now, the way the Jets handled Huff this past offseason and even going into the preseason and throughout the regular season, I don't think he's doing the Jets any favors at all. I'd love to see a franchise tag and just figure out how to maneuver the salary cap. I mean, we're going to have a ton of money in 2025 and 2026 right now. Push other contracts into those years until you figure out what you can do with Huff. And if it winds up being a tag in trade because you can't work out a deal, I'm fine with that too. Or worst case scenario, you have to like eat some cap in the future years and you keep an elite edge rusher on this team. I think it's a big mistake to let him walk because I don't think the Jets are going to get a comp pick from him.
How does the comp pick work? They don't get a comp pick if he walks? Why?
It depends how active you are in free agency. If you want to sign a Tyron Smith and you want to sign a Mike Evans or a Calvin Ridley, there's no shot you're getting a comp pick for Bryce Huff. You
That makes
might
sense.
get like a 6th round pick or a 7th round pick. And for me, the value of Huff walking next year in a year where we will have dead cap in 2025 and we may not be as active in free agency, that means our conversion rate towards a 3rd round pick is far more likely.
So is there a path financially to afford to tag Bryce Huff?
Yeah, absolutely. The Jets can create up to $67 million in salary cap space, but when you start, signing contracts, you can, shift money around initially where you say like, okay, hey, Mike Evans, you're coming in here. You're only going to be like a $7 million cap hit this year, but you're, the 3 void years at the end of your contract plus, the extra years that you're going to have on, you're going to push that money that way. And then if you can't figure out a deal with Huff at that point, you want to make a move and trade him, then it'll free up that $24 million. And then you just shift the cap similar to what Rodgers did, where he pushed all his money off initially, and then he restructured again to bring some of that money back into the current 2023 season. You could do that with all those players. Mike Evans push his money off initially and then bring it back if you do move Bryce Huff. I think it would be a big mistake to let him leave.
How do you feel about this Bryce Huff situation, Jake? Do you think it's inevitable that he's gone, or are you holding on the hope?
Completely agree that it is financially very doable for them to extend Huff and still do what we want them to do as far as offensive line improvements and number 2 receiver. I think what's so frustrating is this feels so preventable. If like the Jets just extended him last year or extended him during the trade deadline, like we all saw where this was headed. Now, the only thing I'll say is if they do let him walk, the only thing I could point to is at least the Jets do have a track record on the defensive side of the ball of being able to develop defensive line talent. Like this is to me telling you that they feel really good about Will McDonald being a damn good player if you're going to let Huff walk. But I don't think it needs to be like Huff first McDonald or Huff first improving the O-line. As Ryan said, the cap can be manipulated. You could create a cap space. You could bring this guy in, and I would even consider, they won't, because it doesn't seem like that's out there, the transitional tag, where if someone does try to sign him, you at least then know what the offer is and you have right of first refusal. So I think it would be terrible if they just let him walk for nothing. But I think it's 50-50 right now. Maybe it's more 60-40 he's gone than he's back. But we know Woody listens to the fans. We know there's a lot of pressure on the Jets to try and keep this guy. So it wouldn't shock me if, like, in the 11th hour, they come to terms on a deal. I think we'll know a lot more next week because Huff's agents will get a legitimate chance to start kind of talking to the teams and get a feel for what his market is. We just assume someone's going to throw the bag at Huff. But what if other teams are like, well, if the Jets are willing to let this guy walk, why is that? Like, the Jets, who have a great defense, are willing to let one of their top defensive players walk. Maybe he's a product of Quentin Williams commanding a double team and Jermaine Johnson and JFM and great coverage in the secondary. So I think there's a scenario where maybe the Huff market's not as drastic as what he thinks it is, and then maybe the Jets in the 11th hour could find a happy medium for both sides. So I don't completely rule it out. Long answer there, I know, but I think it's probably 55-45 he's gone, but I don't have complete, no hope he's back altogether. I'm not there just yet.
And one quick question I have for you guys. Do you think part of the reason why the Jets won't retain Bryce Huff is because they have to save cap for guys like Jermaine Johnson and Sauce and Garrett to be extended eventually? Like, is that in the back of their minds at all? Like, because I feel like that's where I'm at. I want to make sure we're able to afford the guys that we all love when they are eligible for a contract extension, or is that not even in the conversation right now because it's too far away?
I mean, you're talking, what would it be, 2026 when their big money kicks in, 2027 maybe? I know Hall's going to be a little bit earlier. He'll probably restructure after next season or get some type of extension. But I think if you add on years to what where their 5th year options would be, I would think that money's not coming for a little bit of time. So if you can do a Band-Aid 3-year, $45 million guaranteed contract for Huff or, $60 million or whatever you want to call the number, I think you'll be able to clear enough at that point to be able to keep him. I mean, heck, the Bills they brought in Von Miller after they had a loaded team. There's no reason the Jets can't figure this out.
It's fake. It's a woozy. It's a wazzy. It's like the Subway $5 footlong. It's not real. I hate when we use now the cap's a problem. Like, the cap might be a problem in 2025 or 2026. Can we have a winning year first and then we'll worry about that then? Like, I don't want to hear it.
It sounds like a great problem to have too many good players that you can't sign.
Right? This is a great problem to have, but it's also giving me anxiety, the fact that we need to win now with them on cheap contracts. That's where I'm at too with that. So we shall see. Nose kills with €10, I believe. Sign Bakhtiari to an incentive Leighton deal and get 10 games out of him just to silence the "I told you so." When any other team he goes to, he'll be healthy, 17 games, all pro. Hashtag Jets luck. That's how the mindset of a Jets fan thinks nowadays, which is
Everything's
very
pessimistic. It's got to be, right?
and like rightfully so. Like I'm like a usually known as an optimist, but bro, it's slowly dwindling by after what this season did to me. I feel like this past season broke me to my core, Jake and Ryan. It really did. I'm not gonna lie. It really broke me. Broke all of us.
I get it. It just as difficult as this season was. Like, we've seen the Jets be bad before, and they have no talent. They're bad, and they do have talent. They just need to fix the most important position in sports. And, like, the fix is Aaron Rodgers returns. Like, even if he's not MVP Aaron Rodgers, like, I don't think people realize just truly how bad the quarterback situation for the Jets has been. Like, even if we're talking about the 15th best quarterback in the league next year, and I think Aaron will be better than that, like, that is so drastic from what we have seen. The last count even like Sam's last 2 years too. He was abysmal. Like, it's going to make a huge difference, and they won't have Zach as the backup next year. So, like, at the minimum, your backup is better too. So if Rodgers does miss some time, you at least have more of a chance. So I'm trying to be somewhat positive because it is really negative right now, and I get it. But the NFL is such a year-to-year league, man. I just watched the Texans go from the worst team in the league since 2020 to the divisional round of the playoffs. What changed? They had C.J. Stroud. So it's still about quarterback at the end of the day above everything else. And you have a Hall of Famer with a chip on his shoulder coming back next year.
Yeah, and the defense, even though it might take some degree of a step back, even if you lose Bryce Huff, the fact that you're not guarding against the run consistently and you're playing with a lead is going to generate more turnover opportunities, more pass rush opportunities. You're going to see more sacks. Like, Bryce Huff's value gets significantly higher going into this season with a winning quarterback than it was all of last year when he had 10 sacks.
Yeah, man. All right, you guys are calming my anxiety. Thank you for that. I needed it, man. I needed that. Because you're right, we're super talented and we suck. Oh, we sucked, rather. Different story. Henny, $5. Appreciate you, Henny. What's worse, being in first place all year, losing the division, or wasting Dan Marino's whole career? Should we take a poll, Richie? Now, this, I would have to say, Hennessy Heisman, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with him. He's active on every single Jets YouTube channel there is. But, man, he is like the number one Jets, like, representative in Roundtable Sports and just going at Dolphins fans and at Bills fans' throats. He's ruthless. He was at our event week 1. We witnessed Aaron Rodgers go down together in person. Oh, I'm laughing at it because through the pain. We should make a poll. What do you think? What's worse, being in first place all year and losing the division, or wasting Dan Marino's whole career?
Ooh, man, that is bad. I would say coming from a Jet fan, it's almost like the argument we had earlier this season where it was, would you rather the last 20 years of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the last 20 years of the Green Bay Packers, where you have one title but elite level quarterback play and always have a chance at it? I would take the wasting of Dan Marino's whole career, because at least you're having success throughout the entirety of that career as opposed to losing in the divisional round either way. So I'll take the wins.
Tua. Pay Tua. Pay Tua.
Gotta.
Pay Tua.
He's so good. He needs to reset the quarterback market.
Oh,
$60 million a year. Pay
100%.
him, TD Fin fan. Pay Tua. You're a Tua guy. We love you. Come on, pay him. We love the Tua guy.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out to Tuanon or whatever they're called in Miami.
Two in ears, two and on. Dude, the Dolphins community is another world. Like, it really is. Like, it's cool to compare and contrast. Like, obviously, we're embedded in the Jets community. The Dolphins community is a whole other world, man. Not gonna lie. We got another super chat from Dom C, one of our very own from Talking Jets.
Hell yeah.
3 GOATs. Since Richie brought it up, sad but unlikely that all of the 22 draft studs see a second contract with us. Who are you keeping and who are you letting walk out of Garrett? You have to come on, Dom. Are you doing this to me? This is like terrible. This is an awful question because I don't want to talk about this. I want them all back. But like, what do you think is the most realistic? Especially, think of it this way, right? Sauce Gardner, I don't know how much better he can get. He's literally at the top, right? Like, yes, he can get more interceptions. He can definitely elevate to another level, but he's first team All-Pros first 2 years. I am already thinking about Sauce Gardner is going to reset the cornerback market, whether it's on the Jets or not. Garrett Wilson, you can expect him to get even better. Breece Hall, you can expect him to get even better. We saw a little glimpse of what Jermaine Johnson can become last year, and he was a Pro Bowl replacement. I think there's literally another dimension of Jermaine's game. And same with Ruckert. Like, that's the thing about these players is we love them to death, but they're only going to get better. So I don't even know how you can afford, 2 out of these 5, financially speaking? No one's taking a discount.
I mean, I think Ruckert takes a discount to play on his hometown
Ruckert would
team.
be the only one.
He'd be the cheapest on this list too.
Yeah,
by a wide margin. I get the feeling, depending on how next season goes, if we don't perform the way we should, Garrett Wilson's gone. He'll get traded for 2 first-round picks. The new regime will wind up resetting their
my God,
their draft capital.
Right there, Ryan. Like, I can't even hear that.
I don't want it to happen.
I know, it's going to Houston, okay? I get it. I know what you've been pushing. You're manifesting something wrong, Ryan. You're manifesting a bad situation that I don't want to be a part of.
If it doesn't work out. If it works out and Rodgers is all good, I don't think we have anything to worry about. Hall, I think, gets another contract, but it'll be like a Band-Aid type deal.
That scares the living crap out of me. Breece Hall is an interesting one because he's at a position where traditionally you don't get paid, at a second-year contract. And he was a second-round pick, which means they don't have the 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm. That's why they tried to get up. Like, how much this is an interesting conversation. How much more would you have traded to get Breece at the end of the first versus comparatively having him at 36, I think is what we got him at, or 34.
And if we did that trade, don't forget, we would not have Ruckert, Clemens, Max Mitchell, because we would have packaged all those draft picks to get up. So say goodbye to Ruckert and all those other guys.
I would probably do that, though. I would do that plus an extra pick in the following year. I don't know what that extra pick would have had to be, but that 5th-year option for Breece would have been absolutely electric to have. Now it just sort of turns into a franchise tag situation where maybe you tag him 2 years in a row, or you give him a 3-year Band-Aid deal after next season, and then you kind of lower the financial cost over those next 3 years you would have tagged him anyway.
Damn, bro. This is a sad reality. I just win with them now. Jake, where's your head at with this conversation?
Well, I think they could keep 3 out of 5 for sure. Ruckert's a nice story, but let's see what he does this year before you have to worry about do we want to extend him to lower his cap number before he goes into the last year of his deal. Breece is interesting because you could do the Band-Aid suggestion that Ryan said, or you put the tag on him for 2 years and it's all guaranteed. It counts directly against your cap, but is that better than paying a running back long term? I think because Breece is so dynamic as a receiver and a runner, and he's been outside of obviously year 1 with the ACL, he was incredibly durable last year coming off this injury. So if he stays healthy again, maybe you do look to extend him to lower the cap hit. I think you guys got to remember too, they're not paying a quarterback high money right now. Rodgers took such a significant cap hit. Eventually he retires. You'll probably have a new rookie quarterback on a rookie deal or a veteran that's not costing anywhere near like one of the top guys in the league. So I think the Niners are a great comp for this. Look at the amount of star power they have on their D-line, amount of star power they have with their 2 linebackers that have been paid a fortune. They're paying Debo a lot of money. They're paying Kittle a lot of money. They're paying McCaffrey the most out of any running back in the league. So there's a path to keeping all these guys, but I think so much of it depends on who the Jet quarterback is in a couple of years and what that player is making. Because Purdy, as Mr. Irrelevant, he's making nothing. So that's how they're able to sign, Javon Hargrave last offseason to a $100 million contract and pay Bosa and all that. So I wouldn't worry about this yet, Dom, because we still have at least 2 or 3 more seasons before this is even like a legitimate conversation.
And we're going to have
a great problem to have.
Anyway.
Yeah,
we're going to have a Lombardi trophy. And if we get that Super Bowl, or should I say when we do, I don't care what they do anymore. I'm retiring. I'm selling Jets media. I'm going into the sun. I'm just kidding. You imagine, man, we win a Super Bowl in next year? Oh, gosh. That's a great reality. Well, I think that was the last Super Chat, right, Ryan?
I believe so, yes.
Cool. Well, Jets Roundtable. Great to be back. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button on your way out of the show. Let's aim for 100 likes. We really do appreciate all the support, guys. Every Thursday, 1 p.m. EST, we like to give you guys all the latest news regarding the New York Jets in the offseason. NFL Draft Combine right around the corner. So we'll be breaking down that stuff next week. And you guys know where to find us. You know where I am at Jets Media, Jets Talk 24/7 and Talking Jets, and, of course, the Jake Asman Show. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care.